If I had covered my bills, then it makes sense to jump on a 4-person startup because the lessons you will learn in a 4-person startup will go a long way in shaping you to be a good leader, good developer, good manager. In 100%, there is a less of a chance of getting that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Hatchpad Insight. I'm Tim Winkler, the creator of Hatchpad, the community for startup technologists. If this is your first time here, don't forget to hit subscribe for updates on new insight interviews like this one. Today, we're chatting with Lokesh Kumar, the co-founder and senior VP of technology at Urgently, an automotive tech startup headquartered in Vienna, Virginia. Lokesh, thanks for hanging out with us at the Hatchpad.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Why don't we kick things off with a little bit of an intro on yourself, if you want to explain to our viewers how you got to your current position at Urgently.
Sure. So Urgently is roughly like 8 years old in this incarnation of it. So I'm one of the co-founders. So I've been here from day one, running the engineering essentially, and built the platform. Prior to that, I worked in various companies, both small and big, a couple of them startups, companies like Comcast, VeriSign, which are big ones, and then many small ones like Wireless Matrix, and then some startups that I was part of, Pervasio, Family Armor, and all of them didn't pan out for me, but Urgently is a different story.
Sounds like you found a good home there. Why don't you expand a little bit more on what you're building at Urgently? If you can talk to us a little bit more about the product, the problem that you're solving, and a little bit more on the tech stack that you're using to solve those problems.
Yeah, so Urgently is a mobility assistance business and provides not just a platform, but also the complete assistance service to stranded motorists. So if you break down, you can essentially get help from our platform. We at Urgently, what we say is that if it moves, it will break, and if it breaks, it will need assistance. So we are in that business. That's where we come in. The inception of Urgently was prior to 2013, but in early 2013, 6 of us, we come together and we are meeting over the weekends, evenings, talking about what urgent problems can we solve. And one of the things that we were looking at was roadside assistance. The experience at that time of roadside assistance was very, very archaic. And if you recall, definitely around 2010 timeframe, the way it worked was your car breaks on the side of the road or on highway. The very first thing you did was you pick up your phone and you will call your friends or family. And that's your first reaction. And if you don't get to them, you will call your insurance company. And you have to find that card first somehow. If you don't find it, you will call your wife, your brother, sister, whatever. Ask them, hey, can you send me the card? And they'll send it to you, and then you call. And then the nice person on the other end of the phone call will take your details, where are you? What do you see around you? What mile marker? And your brain is thinking like, I see trees. But you will end up giving all the details, and then the person will tell you that somebody will come in about 60 minutes. And then you wait. And it's 45 minutes, you haven't heard anything, and you're thinking, 15 more minutes left, nobody has come in, let me call again. You call again, you are now told, XYZ towing is definitely going to be there in 15 minutes. Around 60 minutes, somebody shows up. If it goes beyond 60, your brain is completely messed up, saying, I have no idea, this is not coming. But if the person does show up, and the person will come in, he will ask you a few questions, and then will start loading your car. And you are still thinking, is this the right person? You have no clue. But ultimately, everything will work out. So you went through that whole experience, which was nerve-wracking for you. So we thought that needs to change. And that's where Urgently was born.
Excellent. Certainly solving a problem that most individuals have faced at one point in their life.
Yeah, and then if you go back and if you think about it, the breakdown doesn't look at time of the day or the place. It just happens. You can break down on 66 and the cars are whizzing by at 60 mile an hour or 66 mile an hour. You can break down in undesirable part of the town, or your daughter breaks down at night and you are in panic. We have seen people break down, for example, in the complete jungle near the Grand Canyons, and they are calling and they are frantic. That happens. So breakdown is one part, but the anxiety that comes with it is what we try to put to rest. So in some ways, we say that we are in a peace creation business, to so to speak.
Yeah, sounds like you guys are providing peace of mind. Tell me a little bit more about the tech stack. Let's dive into some of the internal infrastructure there urgently. What makes this product tick?
Yeah, so the platform that we have, the architecture is essentially microservices in the back end, and then there are micro apps in the front end. Those are kind of industry standards. Almost every tech stack you look today, you will find it. The microservices that we have on the back end, they are built on Java, Spring Boot. Everything runs on AWS Cloud. Back when we were starting, AWS Cloud was the cloud. There was no other cloud at them. Now we have Google Cloud and Azure and all those things. So we use heavy AWS services today. The front end is a mixture of Angular, JS, React, and it has matured over time. Earlier we had iOS, Android, all those things. Now we have more like React Native. When we started in about 2011-12 timeframe, Spring Boot didn't exist. Spring MVC did. The choice was either Spring with Java, or you used C# with Spring, which was called Spring Net, or Ruby Rails. I had experience in all of three of them at that time, almost equal in all of them. And the choice had to be made as to which one to use. The Rails at that time was still not very stable. About a couple of years before that, Twitter was still running on Rails and they were having issues. And I would hear, oh, they went down again. And I said, you know what, we need to stick to something that is a little more stable. The other thing was, what resources can we find in the industry that were cheaper? Back then, finding a Rails developer was $125 an hour. Finding a Java developer was $75 an hour. So you do the math. And I think that's what ended up being. And I don't think I regret that choice. I think it has done well. I think now there are mixtures. We have Python, we have Node.js, we have all those things, but the heavy usage is still Java, Spring Boot.
Excellent. Why don't we jump into a little bit more on the specifics of this discussion? And one of the main points we wanted to cover was technical debt. A lot of early stage product teams that we interact with or have heard from, they produce a lot of tech debt. They are optimizing a lot of features and a lot of aspects of the product to get it out the door and get early customers on board. What is your mindset around this topic of technical debt?
A lot depends on what market you are in. That's how I look at it. And I've done 3 different startups and 3 different technologies. If you have a product startup, then your mindset has to be, what do I want to learn and what minimum product service or manual effort do I need to learn that to make that happen, right? So let's say if you want to learn how do people react to a button on the left side, you want to build that really, really quickly and you want to learn that. That's what I call learning mindset. So early on, you are really in a learning mindset phase. You have to continue that throughout the company's life, but early on, you need to be really quick about that. If you are in a B2B platform business like Urgently at this time, then you still need to know what is the minimum you need to do to get that deal or a pilot, for example, right? Those things come with their own limitations. They will put some kind of a timeline around it. Pilot needs to start in 20 days. Deal is cutting over to you in 2 months. At that time, again, your choice is, what do you do? So at that time, the way I look at it is that early on, your focus has to be to win the customers. While you should be mindful of the technical debt, you are making that choice. That is not your priority early on. That is the time to move very, very fast. As you grow the product and you start to see the effects of technical debt slowing you down, then you have to start paying it down. One way to look at it is that if you're spending all of your time just paying the debt or more than 50% of the time, then you're not moving fast. If you are spending 10% of your time paying the technical debt, then that's okay. It's more like you have a credit card debt. If you keep piling more and more on it and never pay even the minimum amount of it, you at some point will be just paying the debt and never pay the principal. And that's the same thing you have to look at. So early on, when I built these things, I was mindful of the decisions that I'm making, and these are going to be tough on the architecture as the team moves. But I had no way of knowing how far this will go. Unless you really want some big customers and you're really serving them, it's all a trial. So the minimum amount of time you spend thinking about the tech and more amount of the time thinking about how to win the customers is what I would do. And I'll do it again.
It's got to be a tough balancing act. You probably have so many ideas on features like, oh, well, this could make it do this, or this could make it a little bit more shiny or flashier. And so really prioritizing those features in order to get the product out and start looping in that initial phase of customers, it sounds like is top priority.
That is right. It's not just the features, it's also what is your testing philosophy? Are you automating? How much are you automating? Remember, what also happens is that if you are one of the early people, right, or 3, 4, 5 early developers, pretty much you know everything, which means your mind is always telling you, if you did this, this will break. As the team grows, that doesn't happen anymore because they don't have the context of all the bits and bytes that were there. So you have to keep that in mind as well. But yes, we had to make lots of decisions, and those are small decisions, but they definitely add up over time.
Extremely valuable feedback for folks that are thinking about building something in an early stage. Let's jump into a follow-up question here, which also kind of plays into the concept of working at an early stage startup. Can you talk through what are some of the pros and cons of joining startups at different stages?
One way to look at that, in my experience, is risk versus reward curve. At a later stage startup, risk is low, the reward is also lower, maybe not low, right? Sometimes you could work for a startup that was 4 people and never becomes Facebook. So if you were 100th employee in Facebook, you are still very rich if you're looking at from the monetary reward perspective. However, if you look at a 4-person startup without any real raise, the risk is higher. The reward is also higher, both in terms of opportunity to learn and shape the company, and the monetary reward as well is higher. The latter part depends on how naive you were when you were joining it. For a 100% startup, most likely there is a serious money behind it. Otherwise, it will be very tough for you to support a 100 people company, unless, of course, you are in something like flashy business like autonomous cars or some of the other things, where even if there was no revenue, you still have so much money, you can hire hundreds of people. You don't know where those things will go. Many of them will pan out, many of them will not pan out. So you have to match your risk reward profile at your stage of life to the company. If I had covered my bills, then it makes sense to jump on a 4-person startup, because the lessons you will learn in a 4-person startup will go a long way in shaping you to be a good leader, good developer, good manager. In 100-person, there is a less of a chance of getting that. That's how I look at it.
What about from a time restraint perspective? Do you feel like joining a 4-person startup is going to be more demanding on your time than a 100-person startup?
So generally speaking, yes. I mean, 4-person startup, you end up becoming the core, and the core never stops. Even today at this stage, the core still works much, much harder, right? So you have to be ready for those things. You have to look at your life as well, where you are. So the image of a startup where people are living off of pizza and Coke and sleeping on the couch in the basement is actually true to some extent. You may not be really sleeping on a couch, but most likely you're not even sleeping. That's what it means, actually. Like you took some hours and you went on the sofa and off you go. That is true. That is where we went through as well. But if you can't do it for family reasons or health reasons or monetary reasons, then 4-person startup is not for you.
Well, I will say this has been extremely helpful feedback for our viewers. Lokesh, thank you so much for spending time with us. We look forward to hearing new updates about what Urgently is building and wishing you the best of success.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
If you all enjoyed this Insight interview, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for updates on new Hatchpad videos like this one.